جمهورية كوت ديفوار. السيدات والسادة الحضور
Gentlemen
الكريم،
and all the attendees, allow me in the beginning to express my happiness in receiving my dear brother, the Foreign Minister of Cote d'Ivoire, and his accompanying delegation in his visit to his second country, Egypt, which we are very happy and delighted to have this visit, especially since I have a great friendship with my dear brother, the Foreign Minister. When we both served in Germany, Berlin, as ambassadors to our respective countries. This visit to Egypt comes to further strengthen the bilateral ties between the two countries, especially in the last period of time after President Abdelatty al-Sisi's visit to Abidjan, and this is surely an opportunity for us to have serious discussions and positive discussions in light of this third meeting between the two countries. And this session is the first of its kind to be held at the level of foreign ministers after elevating ties between the two countries to strategic partnerships between Egypt and Cote d'Ivoire, and the development of political collaboration between the two countries. Today, with my brother, the Foreign Minister, we discussed several issues related to bilateral ties and cooperation between the two countries. Also, I sent him President Abdelatty al-Sisi's greetings to the Cote d'Ivoire's President as well. And of course, we both discussed the will of the two countries and the leadership of the two countries to work together to further strengthen and develop ties between the two countries, specifically in investment and trade and economic ties between the two nations. I agreed with the Minister of Foreign Affairs on the need to deliver on President al-Sisi's and the Ivory Coast President Hassan Ouattara to further ties, and the success of the visit of the economic delegation that visited the country of the Ivory Coast last year in May. Also, another delegation from Egypt visited Cote d'Ivoire in October 2024, and this delegation had lots of members from the private sector, and this was a very important visit indeed, strengthening ties, and saw the fourth committee being inaugurated and development of economic and trade ties in light of the great development seen in Cote d'Ivoire under the leadership of their president Hassan Ouattara. And this was, of course, a reason making Cote d'Ivoire a new economic hub in West Africa and a windowway for Egyptian exports as well, and Egyptian investments in this very important country in the African continent. We discussed today the collaboration between the two countries, specifically in the agricultural sector and fisheries, as well as infrastructure, especially that there are several Egyptian companies already working actively in Cote d'Ivoire and playing a great role in investment projects and development projects and infrastructural development in the country. And these companies, of course, have many offices there and are working seriously in infrastructural development in the country, especially in road reforms, as well as building bridges, as well as the health sector and transport sector and educational sector, as well as the medical field and pharmaceutical fields, specifically since Egypt has a great reputation in the medical and pharmaceutical field in Côte d'Ivoire. We have also agreed to further our collaboration in the economic sector, as well as in other programs and projects related to human cadres and technical education, and I expressed our willingness to work with Côte d'Ivoire in training of human resources in this area, specifically as we are seeing lots of programs for development being implemented by Egypt, and we also discussed obviously the will of the two countries to further ties and strengthen them. As I mentioned, there was an industrial delegation made of 24 Egyptian companies last May that visited Côte d'Ivoire, and of course the Export Industrial Committee also had a visit in October 2024, and as I said, these delegations, and hopefully I myself will be visiting Côte d'Ivoire, heading an economic delegation with several ministries as a result of directives by President Abdelatty al-Sisi very soon. We also discussed collaboration in the field of facing terrorism, and I would like to congratulate Côte d'Ivoire for their accomplishments in fighting terrorism and reaching stability and security as well as development in the West African nation. And I also discussed Al-Azhar's willingness, as well as the Ministry of Defense and Ministry of Interior's willingness to further collaborate in several programs and projects in training of their religious figures as well as their technical staff in building their capacities. And Al-Azhar has offered to further send more staff and receive imams from Côte d'Ivoire in order to provide them with the necessary training and Islamic teachings of peace and to fight fundamentalism that is unfortunately being disseminated by terrorists. Also, we discussed the need to have the free trade agreement of the African countries, between African countries, and as you know, we signed 2 memorandums of understanding related to diplomatic passports between the 2 countries, which exempts them from visas, which shows the depth of ties between the 2 countries, as well as the need to further increase visits. Also, we signed another memoranda of understanding and communique resulting from this visit, which discusses the political collaboration and partnership between the 2 countries and their elevation to strategic partnership ties. Also, today, with my brother, the foreign minister, we discussed several files of mutual interest, topping them, of course, the situation in West Africa. And I spoke to my dear friend and my brother about the result of my visit that I was on to 6 African countries: Chad, Nigeria, Senegal, and the Sahel, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. And I discussed with him the importance of these visits and strengthening of ties between these countries and increasing collaboration between the countries in fighting terrorism. And with regards to Côte d'Ivoire, which is a member in the ECOWAS, which is a very important community which has over 40% of economic activity in West Africa, and we discussed how we can fight terrorism and unite in this regard, as well as further development causes and collaboration in the economic sector between ECOWAS and Egypt. And we are looking forward to more partnerships and collaboration and mutual partnership between Egypt and ECOWAS. Also, we discussed the challenges and the security challenges and humanitarian challenges being faced, as well as developmental challenges that are facing West Africa and the Sahel region, and the Guinea area, and Egypt's full willingness to collaborate in this field. Also, I discussed with the Foreign Minister the main issue for the Arabs, which is the Palestinian cause, especially because Côte d'Ivoire is very important in the Islamic Conference, and the unacceptable crisis in Gaza and the genocide, war and starvation that the Israeli occupation government is currently undergoing, and the daily aggression and humanitarian aggression which breaks all international laws, and the failure of the international community to prevent these massacres and crimes that we are seeing every day on the ground. Also, the full rejection and condemnation of Egypt for the relocation of the Palestinians from their land. And of course, I thanked and the Foreign Minister thanked Egypt for its great and pivotal role in this area, especially with regards to the delivery of humanitarian aid to the Palestinians, which has been impeded by the Israeli occupation forces, and also the Egyptian collaboration between Qatar and the United States in order to reach some sort of ceasefire agreement and the release of hostages and the complete aid delivery to the Palestinians. And again, I renew that Egypt will never stop its negotiations or its humanitarian role or its efforts in the sustainable transportation and delivery of humanitarian aid through the Rafah border crossing, which is always open at the Egyptian side of the border. But of course, there are impediments as a result of the occupation forces in disruption to receiving this aid from the Palestinian side of the borders. Also, we discussed the airdrops of aid that is being done by the Egyptian Air Force in order to alleviate the suffering of the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. We also exchanged views that no peace or stability in this region will ever be reached until the Palestinian people get their full rights and their sovereign state. Also, we discussed the situation in Sudan and the ceasefire in Sudan and the need to further the political cause in Sudan. We also discussed the situation in the Horn of Africa and the Egyptian water rights and its threat as a result of the Ethiopian policies and unilateral decisions. And also, we've discussed that Egypt will continue conforming to international laws in order to protect its rights and water resources. We also discussed the development of the African Union and their role, especially because Côte d'Ivoire is a very active member in the African Union. And we also talked about the issue of maritime security, specifically in the Red Sea area, and the situation in this area, of course, as there is a need to reach security and stability and hope for an immediate ceasefire and the DRC as well to reach stability in this country. And again, I welcomed and thanked my dear brother, the Foreign Minister, and Côte d'Ivoire as a nation for its complete and full support for Egypt's UNESCO candidate minister, Khaled Al-Anani. And again, we thank Côte d'Ivoire for its constant support, whether written or verbal, to our candidate as well. That will be held in the UNESCO headquarters in Paris on the 6th of October this year. Once again, I would like to welcome my dear friend and brother, the Foreign Minister, and I will always say Egypt will always continue to be a friend and a partner to Côte d'Ivoire and a support to all its African brothers as a result of its belief in African nations and how they can surpass any challenges and reach great heights for its peoples. Now the word to the Foreign Minister of Côte d'Ivoire. Please, you have the floor, sir. Thank you very much, my dear friend. Thank you. I would like in the beginning to say and give a message for President Abdelatty al-Sisi, where I would like to thank him. And the message thanks him and expression of brotherly ties from the Côte d'Ivoire's president and the whole nation as a whole to the Egyptian people, the Egyptian-friendly people, and we would like to further collaborate in reaching sustainable development for our countries and our peoples and our youth and our women and our elderly as well, that have given very much to our two countries. Egypt, for Côte d'Ivoire, is a great example of a great country, a large country that is calling for peace, a country of development and achievements, great achievements in several fields, specifically in economic development and societal development, as Egypt is the country of the pharaohs and the country of the pyramids, but also it is the country, and very soon we will see the inauguration of the Grand Egyptian Museum, which we'll be very happy to visit. And Egypt is also the cradle of civilization and mankind and humankind. And this is what is encouraging us to continuously communicate with Egypt, as Egypt has a great history in several fields and several sectors. There are great opportunities and scientists that have come out of Egypt and the Middle East as a whole, and we are very, very proud of our relationship with Egypt and our ties with Egypt under the leadership of President Abdelatty al-Sisi, with all the developments and accomplishments under his leadership and in his era. When we came from the airport till here, we have seen great achievements, and there are many projects that have been implemented and finished already that has worked to alleviate even the transport issues, and we've seen this great city, and thank you for giving us this opportunity to see such achievements on the ground. I would like to express my happiness to be here and heading this delegation and our bilateral collaboration between Egypt and Côte d'Ivoire, as I would like to talk about the bilateral discussions we held in friendly terms, which shows the development of ties and the will of the two countries and the two governments to move forward and further develop our ties. And I would also like to thank all the officials and all the people involved in the success of our meeting. I will not discuss lots of the things we talked about, but I will agree that we have mutual understanding and points of view, and we are working to reach full cooperation and collaboration and solutions to some of the issues that have been discussed, as we are hoping to live in a secure and stable world which is peaceful and has sustainable development. And we are hoping to establish our industrial sector in our country, and I would like to thank the Foreign Minister Abdelatty that will be heading a delegation to Côte d'Ivoire soon, so we can further explore channels of communication and collaboration between our two countries. And I said that our economic ties can work together, as you have the know-how and the technological know-how and expertise, and we would like to learn from this and share this with you, and I'm sure we will have brilliant results if we do so, and we can definitely be an example that can be seen in Africa and give our peoples an example that development is possible, and we can always collaborate together as African countries, and we don't have to leave the African continent in order to reach prosperity and enhancement of our nations. Thank you very much to all the commitment you have shown to support our country and all the brotherly feelings and friendship between us. With regards to what we did, we agreed on diplomatic passports agreement where they do not need visas, and this is a great achievement, and we need to complete this. We must continue collaboration as well with regards to transport and aviation. This agreement regarding visas will allow more visits between the two countries and enhance these visits, and this is a very important agreement and a positive agreement that must be completed with more agreements as well. And we hope to further establish ties between our countries' airlines as well as Egypt's airlines, to have a direct flight between our two countries, Cairo and Abidjan, and we have great opportunities in this regard, especially in the tourism sector, and we are looking for Egypt's expertise in this field. We also held a great meeting, and we will return to Côte d'Ivoire happy that we have seen the support of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and Egypt's support to Ivory Coast for development and prosperity. Thank you for giving us this chance and this opportunity, and these great results are a reflection of the will of our two presidents from Egypt and Ivory Coast. And I've been keen to give our President's message, Al-Hassan Ouattara, which shows great friendship and appreciation of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and ties between the two nations. And also the inauguration of the Grand Egyptian Museum. We are delighted, and I'm very sure that the President of Cote d'Ivoire, Al-Hassan Ouattara, will be very keen to attend this great event. We have presidential and parliamentary elections in October. And we know, as a result of our efforts and under the leadership of the President of Cote d'Ivoire and the social solidarity that has been witnessed in our country, as well as development in several sectors, we are sure that President Alassane Ouattara will win these presidential elections, and this will hopefully allow us to continue our ties and development in collaboration with other countries and other African nations. Thank you very much. Ms. Basant Mustafa, your question. My question is to Dr. Badr Abdelatty. In light of the Egyptian efforts to save our brethren in Palestine, what is being said regarding a new Egyptian-Qatari ceasefire agreement? What are the latest developments in such negotiations, specifically that the Israeli aggression is ongoing on civilians, recently on the journalists as well? Of course, Egyptian efforts have not stopped, and we fully reject the military occupation and military attacks on journalists, and civil society is totally against these attacks, and we have constant communications as a result of the directives of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi with all the regional leaders, as well as the United States, as well as the European Union. And I discussed yesterday with the Foreign Minister of Germany in a long discussion call and discussed the grave situation and these irresponsible decisions of the Israelis in their decision to fully control Gaza. There is condemnation by the international community, and we are pushing forward the resumption of negotiations, and this can only happen if there is a will and a political will to do so, to reach an agreement that will put an end to this war and see the release of hostages, as well as the delivery of humanitarian aid to the Palestinians, as well as create a political dialogue. Because if there is no political dialogue or political resolution, even if the war ends, if there is no roadmap for the Palestinian independent state, then there is no guarantee that these military aggressions will not recur. This is the fifth round of war and destruction, and all our efforts now are going towards the ceasefire and the delivery of humanitarian aid, and obviously stopping the Israeli plan of taking full control of Gaza and the full occupation of the Gaza Strip. After this, we will hopefully hold the International Cairo Conference for the rebuilding of Gaza, which will create political dialogue and have the Palestinian state. And we have said several times, if there is a political clear roadmap and a Palestinian state, then there will be stability, and this will allow the Palestinian statehood and Palestinian people to prosper as a state and support their efforts in building their nation, as well as give stability and security to the people of Palestine. This is what we are working towards in all our contacts with international community, also the Foreign Minister of Turkey, as well as Amir Faisal bin Farhan, the Foreign Minister of Saudi Arabia, as well as Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman, the Foreign Minister of Qatar, as well as the American side, and all the different members which are working towards a quick end and a ceasefire to be reached. And we are hopeful, and we have hope that an agreement can be reached, but we need political will in order to achieve this. Thank you.
أستاذ محمد حجاب جريدة الأهرام، تفضل.
Mr. Mohammed Hageb from Ahram. My question for the Foreign Minister of Cote d'Ivoire with regards to the water crisis, and we are seeing the situation between Egypt and Ethiopia. How does Cote d'Ivoire see Egyptian water security for Egypt?
Merci infiniment.
Thank you for this question. We know that throughout history, Egypt and water has always been a very important topic, and we know that when there are problems with regards to water scarcity, there must be a need for dialogue. Any unilateral decisions will obviously result in a deterioration in ties, so there must be willpower for peace, and this must be the aim, and this can only be achieved through dialogue, and we must always work towards dialogue without taking any unilateral decisions that would impede stability and security and peace. And of course, this is our vision. Peace must be embodied in behavior, and this is what we see with regards to the water and the Nile water, and this what is happening in West Africa and around us. What we say every time is that every time a problem arises, this can divide us, so we must return to negotiating and the negotiation table in order to maintain our unity and our power and strength. Sooner or later, we must sit on the negotiation table, especially after hardships. So why not start with dialogue? And I also said this with regards to the situation in Sudan as well as Ukraine. Even in West Africa, there must be a prevalence of peace, and weapons will never allow this to happen. Thank you.